But people online can't hear us apparently, so we're just fixing that. But we'll go for questions. Councillor Padder, Councillor Padder and Councillor Mahmood. Oh, sorry.
Can you expand on your strategy on YJS? How are you going to involve victims, more victims? And the next one was how you're going to. I forgot the question on that now.
Shall I answer that?
Yeah, we'll come back to it when you remember it, Councillor Padder.
Councillor, so we have a victims officer in the team, and we've also brought in a manager who's got specific responsibility for victims. So that's really sort of helped us to push forward in that direction. And we've also expanded the offer of the victim support, not only to children in the YJS, but also children in social care as well. So we're looking, we're taking referrals from social care. So that's how it's kind of expanded into social care as well as youth justice.
Thank you. Councillor Mahmood.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for the presentation, Susie. The two questions. One is, I just wanted to know, you said 80% consultation, you carried out the consultation of satisfaction. So you said 80% children are happy or agree. So how did you carry out that? How did you manage to get consultation and the result from children? One. And second is, in your priority, your top priority is to increase parental support and public engagement or community engagement. How do you think, how would you implement that piece of work?
Okay. So how do we consult? We have a survey monkey, and the questions on that change every 6 months, and they go out across the integrated youth service. So we are part of that integrated youth service. So it goes out to our young people, and they are asked to fill that questionnaire in as part of their order. So they do it once per order. So they might do it more than once, but just once per order, and they fill it in terms of what they've found, satisfactory about our service. So they have questions on there, and 87% said that they were happy with the service.
Thank you.
And
just microphone.
It's all right. Yeah, I've got the second one. So it was around parental support. So long time ago we used to have a parenting officer, but unfortunately with austerity we kind of lost that. So it's really building back those services for parents, because they really do suffer in this scenario, especially around exploitation. So we have we've trained 2 members of staff in non-violent resistance, which is a parental tool. So they've just done their first level 1 with that, and we've also run an NVR programme through one of the youth justice officers who had the training already. So run a program for parents on non-violent resistance, which is a technique to be used to try to sort of work more effectively with teenage children. And we've also brought in the Family Lives Partnership, which has proved really, really successful. So we commission them in, and what they do is they go into the family home. A worker goes straight in there. That worker's got a lot of different sort of programs that they're trained in, so they can use the most effective one. So they go into the family home, which we find helps our parents, because if they're asked to just go on to a parenting program, they have to come into Percival House or wherever that's being done. This is individual support. They go into the home and they have 8 sessions once a week with the parents, and try to really sort of advocate for them to use certain techniques, and they work with the whole family, not just the parent, and it's done in a very kind of non-judgmental way. And I think our parents really get on with it. They kind of the work is very good as well, and brings them alongside. So yeah, those are the 2 main ones that we do at the moment.
Councillor Anand, did you want to come in?
Chair, I just wanted to add to what Susie's just said, that we really go into depth to support the families and the children. Sometimes you have difficult circumstances. You have families who come from traumatized areas, or they have traumatized circumstances. And it's very difficult also to really go deeper to find out why these issues are there. But there is so much work that goes on behind the scenes to support the families and to support the young person. As Susie has said, that, you know, children first, offenders after. So the difficulty sometimes is that when you know there are challenges and circumstances behind these cases, you will still find that we will go in to support the family to make sure that they are sort of part of that sort of investigation, and part of that support is available to the whole family and not just the parents and the young person.
Thank you, Councillor Councillor Ball, next.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, so it's good to see that the KPIs are moving in the right direction. I just had two specific questions. So one is you talked about school exclusion, but one of the things that we're hearing about is large numbers of pupils who are persistently absent. So they're not being excluded, but they're not turning up to school. Are you finding that to be a problem? Are you finding, you know, children in that category coming to your attention? And then the other one was, I was concerned about the you gave two examples of about looked after children who'd been exploited, and then in the report it says there were seven looked after children that are known to the Youth Justice Service. So it's over 2%, because we're talking about small numbers overall. So do you think there's anything that the council as corporate parent can do to try to help in terms of maybe trying to find other placements out of borough that where there wouldn't be, you know, the gangs wouldn't know of them, you know, to try to sort of take them out of harm's way when there are, you know, when there are particularly the, you know, the young people where there are concerns, but they've not yet, you know, actually been arrested.
I was just going to take that one. No, I was going to take that one first, Councillor. I think there is something that could be done. I think that Ealing Council has really struggled with placements, with the rising costs of placements, and unfortunately I see that the quality is going down. You know, they're able to charge exorbitant fees, but not the quality isn't going up with that. So I think for me, an increase in therapeutic placements that actually where the staff are trained in trauma-informed practice and are able to deal with the children that we are seeing, because the looked after children that I am referring to, you know, they are the ones that we see on a trajectory towards a custody. And, you know, it's so difficult to try and intervene. So to have therapeutic placements outside of London probably would be fantastic. I think that would really, really help. Yeah, it's really hard to intervene with that top end of child. Yeah. Yes, the persistently absent children are definitely on our radar. I'm now sort of going to the I'm just trying to think what it's called, suspensions panel. So I'm sitting on that so that I can see if there's any crossover between the children on our cohort and those that are being regularly taken out of school, because you can then see a pattern towards exclusion and we can try to intervene early. It would be great if we had a bit more early intervention resource in the team. We've got a small amount, which we do use well, but, you know, I'd like to get involved in that more, really.
Chair, if I may also add that for Councillor Ball is we have our Citizens Tribunal members who have been looking into the same kind of issues and are doing a lot of work to then compile a report for us. So again, we've got independent Citizens Tribunal members who will be looking into these issues about suspensions and also exclusions and absence from school.
Thank you very much. Councillor Conti.
Thank you. My first question was just about sort of employment and training afterwards, and in terms of how we can ensure that sort of young people can get into good quality jobs at the end of that, and ensure that, because, you know, that's probably the best route for them to improve their lives in the long term. So, you know, and I think maybe that's also the difficult thing to get into, because if you've been associated with crime, probably some employers are going to be more reluctant to do that. So how do we help to break down those barriers to ensure that? The second thing is about victim of crime. So do all young people who are victims of crime get referred to, or do they know about units? So do the police tell them that you offer that service? How could that be improved if not? And then the third thing was just about sort of how this correlates with actually the rates of crime. Because I was just looking on the Met Police crime dashboard, and I was particularly interested in knife crime and looking at the bit in the document about that. And it says that here in the last 12 months, knife crime in England's gone up by 26%. So even though of all this good work, and obviously that doesn't represent just young people, it's a more broad, for everyone. I couldn't find that it breaks down by age, but do we see that the rates of crime are going down, and particularly with knife crime, because it's not only children, it's sometimes young people who are perpetrating that, it's children who are then the victims of other, of that as well. So how do we correlate those two things together?
So the knife crime, I would say that we see a lot of children coming in at entry point with knife offences. So we don't know them. They're just coming straight in with a knife. So that's one of the entry offences, as is now robbery, which, it used to be kind of high up the scale robbery, but now it's an entry point offence into the Youth Justice Service. So we haven't quite cracked repeat offences with knives. The children who tend to be repeat offenders with knives are those right at the top who are being exploited, who carry knives because their lives are in danger. So they're very difficult to intervene with, and similar to what I was saying about looked after children. Those are the ones that we really need to kind of have some kind of other level of intervention with, and we're still trying to sort of work on that at the moment. But the ones who are coming in having sort of had a pocket knife on them and things like that, they're more easy to turn around. They're the ones that have carried it because everybody else seems to be carrying it and that kind of thing. But it's the ones that are at the top end that are harder, and they will be the ones who have repeat offences, and then that leads them unfortunately to custody in the end. If they carry on carrying it. So really difficult to do. Yeah, really difficult one. So the ETE, sorry, go on. Yeah.
I suppose I just wanted to come in on the knife crime aspect, and I think what's really important to just highlight is there is preventative work going on around that, to actually do work in schools with young people, with partners, to actually, I suppose, highlight diversionary tactics and education around the implications of carrying knives, the dangers of it, I suppose, where you could end up. So there's that preventative work before it actually gets into the Youth Justice Service. So just wanted to highlight that.
And in terms of the victims referrals, Fiona, our police sergeant, brings all those victim referrals to us. So I was just going to hand over to her to actually just talk about how we don't miss any.
Yes, so I contact all the victims of crime and explain the restorative justice system to them, and then participation in the scheme is then voluntary. I think roughly we get about a 50% take up, and obviously the young person doesn't have to see the offender again. Contact is all done via the restorative justice worker, who is a third party. And in terms of victims of crime, victims of robberies and serious violence, I will make inquiries with and provide the Ealing YGS contact details for Michaela and Gary, who work with the victims, so they've got a contact point and a reference point, should they want to make contact.
Brilliant. We really try hard not to miss any. And with regards to the education, training and employment, as a team, and for a very long time, we've been extremely focused on getting YJS children either back into education or to maintain the education they've got. And we fight very, very hard for every child that comes through the door, because we know 100% that is the most protective factor that we can have. This new strategic plan that we'll be working on for next year and actually the next 3 years, we want to try to locate more paid opportunities for young people in the YJS to have that kind of work experience and be able to get into something, even if it's just temporary, so that they can have that experience of work. Because as you say, not a lot of people want to give children with offending backgrounds, particularly extensive ones, a chance when it comes to employment. However, we have struck up a very, very really good partnership with Greener Ealing, who have taken several of our children on and given them work, paid work, and one of them has done so well that he's got a permanent contract. So, you know, it's one, but that's the kind of thing that, you know, and that boy was being exploited and involved in quite sort of high level criminality, and that job has pulled him out of that. So that's the sort of thing we need, definitely.
Okay, can I just follow up on the restorative justice question? So you've got about 50% of victims are meeting the perpetrators of the crime. Is there a measure, do you have a sense of how successful that is? Are the victims, are they satisfied with the outcomes, whatever the outcomes they would expect?
I don't deal with the outcomes, and the victims don't meet with the offenders. The contact's all done via a third party. And I think that empowers the victim, because a lot of them are very apprehensive about seeing the person that's, you know, perpetrated this crime against them. And the victim worker, Michaela, is lovely. She's young, she's friendly, and she's very engaging with young people, and she's able to speak to young people. And there's also, she also works with adults. There is an adult restorative justice worker as well, but Michaela does cross over.
But is there a way we can measure the success of this? Because obviously instinctively it feels like a good thing.
Yeah.
But is it successful? Does it have?
I have to be
I don't know what victims would want out of it, but
yeah.
Is there
I have to be truthful and sort of just clarify that we offer this to everybody. 50% come back to us. So that's not 50% meeting the victims. That's 50% coming back and saying, yes, we'd like to meet with your victims worker. And some of them will have phone contact, some of it will be brief, some of them will have support for a number of weeks, months from that victims worker. So not all meet the actual child who's offended against them. That's what we would like to encourage, but not many actually want to sort of go that step further. More of what we get is that shuttle mediation between the two. So they might write a letter back and forth to each other, but it's actually very, very difficult to set up that restorative conference, which is, you know, the real thing that we would like out of restorative justice. But yeah, very difficult to kind of get that set up. So I think the satisfaction of victims, if you measured that, and I'm just trying to rack my brain to think when the last survey was done with victims, but they report well from the contact they have with Michaela, and feel that they are getting their voice back into the justice system. And we are always taking their views and putting them into our assessments and taking them on board, and, you know, not directly reflecting them back to the young person, but making sure that we're kind of trying to incorporate it in the work that we're doing with them. So that's at the moment the best we can do, because we haven't got victims who necessarily want to meet them. So I think it's a work in progress. I think that's why we wanted to sort of engage better with the community, to try and say, you know, we're here to help, and we want, you know, more victims to come forward and have the service, really.
Next is Councillor Kelly.
Thank you very much, Susie, and all your team. Obviously, the report's very rigorous, but often rigorous reports lack some, they're not adorned with case studies. So it's really good to hear about that. You said you're using the word exploitative, and it seems to be, to me, it sounds a bit catch-all. You know, what is an example of exploitation? And, you know, what might be the causes of that exploitation? And, you know, if you could expand on that, it would be useful to me.
Yeah. It's difficult, you know, it's difficult to come from a position of sort of saying it's certainly not a catch-all. However, children that are selling drugs for any adult are all being exploited. They're all victims of exploitation. So that covers quite a lot of the children that we deal with, and are all selling drugs. We also get robberies that are being committed, and there's clear sort of signs of exploitation. Also burglaries. So we had a very, very clear case of a boy being brought over from Romania, trafficked over here and sent into houses to burgle them. Very clear-cut case. Boy said he was 16, clearly about 13. So very small boy, you know, being sent in through small windows and being and burgling the house, and clearly someone waiting outside in a car and bringing him out. Less extreme version, people waiting outside young people's addresses in cars and texting them repeatedly until they come out and come and sell drugs, and threatening them, threatening their families, all that kind of thing. It absolutely exists, and it's unfortunately rife in the cohort that we're dealing with. So I don't know whether you want me to expand further, but it is where there is very clear signs of adults instructing children to do things that they don't want, and grooming children into this behaviour, and then insisting that they have to pay a debt to them because they've lost drugs or they've been arrested with drugs on them, and then they have to pay a debt, often, you know, £10,000. So they then are taken out of London, put in a house where they're needing to chop up drugs and sell them. So it's a reality that we see quite frequently, unfortunately.
You know, those two examples are really helpful to me, because I couldn't fashion my mind around those two examples until you met them, and it just sort of puts into context when we see kids going down the road making a bit too noise and chucking cans of Coke around, and we're thinking, you know, justice for you know, and of course this is not you know what you're here for. You're here for these really hard dangerous cases. So that was really useful to me.
We are
And news to me.
Yeah,
Thank you.
we are, and those are the top end. But we're also there with our turnaround programme at the first entry point. So the first time that child comes across the police, we try to intervene then to make sure they don't get up to the exploitation level.
Thank you.
Councillor Haley was next.
Thank you so much. I've got just two questions that I wanted to ask. So on the report, under the priorities, it acknowledged that there's a huge disproportionate, and there has been a close working relationship with the police colleagues to develop child-centred approach. So I just wanted to know, what strategies or method are used to develop a joint child-centred approach in a partnership with the police? And could you also elaborate and explain what you mean by child-centred approach in this matter? And my other question was on the report, page 54 or 48. It has two page numbers. Under the early intervention, it said there's still work in process, that there hasn't been reached in developing a referral system, or a route rather, for primary or secondary school education in terms of intervention program. So if you are still working on that intervention program and the referral for secondary and primary school, what does the referral look like, or what will it look like, and what are the intervention or programs you're thinking of? And my third question, so to be honest with you, reading the both report, the plan seems to be better, and the IQ, you know, it's better, but it's a bit disheartening to read the other reports where we are not doing great in terms of assessments and risk assessments and planning. So how far have we come? And also, the report really struggles with Black children, and I'm going to be brutally honest here. There's so many stakeholders involved. There were so many lists I was going through, so many partnerships, so many safeguarding partnership. But where are we truly going wrong? And I feel like also reading the report, there's a sense of, it's like a tennis game here. Things like children are getting bounced around the whole system, and it's impacting the Black boys, especially 99% of the black boys are impacted on this. So somebody has to take a blame, right? There has to be accountability, and we can't just say we can't not blame poverty or funding anymore. And we know there's issues, but I really want to know what are the root causes of this, and what are we doing to really make a difference in this specific community? Thank you.
Okay. So in terms of the child first approach with the police, we've been working consistently. We've got a joint working panel with the police that meets every month. Fiona's DI has presented a child first principles presentation to a large amount of officers who were doing training. I don't know how that you might be able to explain how it works, but he hit a number of officers at the same time talking about the child first approach and the principles behind that and all that kind of thing. We also, have a really kind of good relationship in terms of being able to challenge each other around practice. So if something happens in either an arrest or in the police station or anything like that, there is constructive challenge between us, and we will go straight to the police and ask why that's happened. And I think we're trying to sort of bring all those principles into our work with the police, and they are really trying to sort of step up to that. So I think it's still going forward. The Metropolitan Police is massive, and I think it's turning a large ship. But we've definitely sort of made inroads in that area. In terms of the early intervention programme, I think the demand for the turnaround programme, which is also an early intervention programme, has rather overwhelmed us in terms of we've had to do a lot of kind of work on that. So we had 0.5 of a post that we wanted to sort of develop into the schools, and we started developing that work. And what the idea was that we would identify with schools children that were at risk of exploitation and ASB and at risk of exclusion, early exclusion, and we would then bring them to our early intervention worker. However, so a combination between the demand for turnaround and her time on that, and also she got pregnant. So that slightly scuppered that. So we've just recruited another one. So I'm hopeful that that work will pick up again once we get that new person in, and we'll be able to put that 0.5 into sort of further developing that, because it's definitely something we want to move into. I'm the first to acknowledge that we've got a long way to go with black boys coming into the system. We have just developed a new disproportionality plan. So we had one running for about 18 months, which made some really good progress. We reviewed all that. We consulted parents and children again and the team, and we've come up with a new plan, which we're hoping is going to push us even further in the right direction. So it's not just, focus at us. We acknowledge there are things we can do, but it's also, around police and what they can do, and around courts and what they can do. And, you talk about sort of blame. It's very, very difficult because we've done this work a lot in terms of research, and it's very difficult to actually pinpoint what point is the point where we need to sort of make a change. So, we can see that more black boys are stopped and searched. But when you say, when we talk about that with the police, because we do openly talk about it and we present these figures in our board, but their comment back to us quite fairly is that they when they're looking for suspects, unfortunately what they're being asked to look for is a young black boy who is a suspect of a robbery. So they're not stopping a white boy because they're looking for a black boy. So it's really difficult to unpick. We're still trying to unpick it. We have a new extensive plan, which I'm happy to kind of share if it helps, to look at these areas, and we're working on that at the moment. There was another thing as well. I think you were yes. So another thing I just wanted to say about, you say it's heartening to see the strategic plan. The strategic plan literally was signed off as the inspectors came in. So we didn't have a chance to sort of move forward with those priorities before the inspectors came in. And then that kind of skewed us slightly because we had to concentrate on the inspection and the improvement plan that then came out of that. So we did get back on track, but it kind of skewed us. So none of the work that we outlined in that plan was able to get in before the inspectors came. And what was the thing about the risk assessments? Yeah. So the I mean, I'll go into this a bit more in the other one if we've got time, but the area that was particularly criticised was in the out of court service and the assessments in that service. And to put context on that, and it's by no means an excuse, but what we were doing at the time was we were piloting a new assessment, prevention diversion assessment for the Youth Justice Board. So it was very much, there were 3 youth justice services across the country piloting this thing. So we were actually just trying to sort of get to grips with this new assessment and work on it. At the time when the inspectors came, we were on sort of version 4 of the guidance that went with that, which wasn't particularly comprehensive. We were trying to actually develop it with them, and that went to version 8, you know, as it went on. So, and the training for that has not yet been rolled out, and it rolls out in April and May. So we're still, you know, in a position where we were kind of in a pilot position doing that assessment. So that didn't do us a favour. When we'd had previous consultants come in and look at that team's work, it was always seen as outstanding. So we were obviously really, really shocked when it didn't come back like, you know, as we expected it to come back, you know. So we're working on that obviously hard now, having been shocked by that result, really.
Chair, can I also, if I may?
Yeah.
Just add to say that.
Your microphone, Councillor.
Sorry, thank you. You think you've pressed the button, but so, Chair, just to say that for Councillor Haley, is that we're strengthening services for children and young people, especially with additional needs via the Strong Parent and Partnership work recently, which was launched off as our aspirational 23-27 strategy for additional and special educational needs, disability and inclusion. Again, as I mentioned earlier, Councillor Haley, that we have targeted approach to tackling disproportionality in relation to school exclusions via our citizens panel, and that has been very effective, where we have a lot of very strong women who have been working with our schools team to make sure that we can actually address those issues at a core level. It has been a very difficult challenge. I won't say it's been easy, but I think that sort of working with the Ealing Learning Partnership, where the support for the robust challenge and the progress to address this particular issue has been very promising from both sides. And I think in the future, we will be able to really tackle the fact of why these young Black boys are either absent or being excluded from school, and what more can we do to support them to make sure they do stay in school and give them that extra support.
Thank you. We've still got quite a few questions to go, and we have another substantial report after this. So everyone's put their hands up, so they will still ask their questions, but I think we're going to go in groups of 2 or 3, actually in groups of 3, because we really need to crack on a little bit. So if we can go for Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Chair. There's a couple of questions, but first of all, it's really just a bit of very simple clarification, really, because on page 20, it mentions something about boxing activity, and I wonder if that literally meant boxing, because it's got a capital letter there, and I don't know if that refers to something else. Also on page 51, when it's talking about extremism, it mentions incel. Now, the word incel has a certain meaning to me, so I don't know if there's the same meaning that, or if there's something else you could probably elaborate on and just make sure I understand that. And further on from that, really the question I want to like to ask, it probably carries on from the previous answers you've been giving. Been talking about Black boys and boys from mixed heritage, and so I've been seeing an awful lot, which says that a lot of the time you can be put at a disadvantage because you lack the positive male role models in in your life. And also I've seen comparisons in America saying that in America, sometimes boys can be even worse off because of all the negativity around all that racism that exists there, which doesn't necessarily exist here. And so that can be made very difficult for boys who don't have those positive male role models. So also, I don't want to obviously do down these wonderful women, strong women who are here tonight, who are doing such great work. But I do note that it does look like the service is very highly proportionally full of female employees. But I don't know if that necessarily is at the kind of the, if that means that we don't necessarily have so many male employees or males involved in the service who may be able to provide those kind of positive role models and be able to provide that kind of positive influence. And so, of course, that is something that's coming up really. We just look at the progress of where we're heading, and it does discuss looking at gender and people's background when it comes to future recruitment. So how are we really working on how we're making sure that, I know I'm not necessarily saying we put you out of work to get lots of men into your positions. I'm just saying, how do we get more men really involved in that process? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. I'm going to ask Councillor Wesson for his question as well.
Great. Thanks very much for the presentation and also for the plan. So I think we've heard this evening that restorative justice has the potential to be quite powerful. But if you look at the Service Development Plan 3.3, it's actually ranked as red in terms of the expansion of restorative justice to the Ealing alternative provision, which is actually in mine and Councillor Bricklini's ward. So it's of particular interest to us. I just wanted to understand the barriers around expanding restorative justice, what we're doing to further its implementation, and also what the revised timescales are, because I didn't get a sense of that from looking at the report. Thanks.
And the third person to ask is Councillor Bricklini.
Yeah, following on from Councillor Wesson's, you gave us examples on children being pressured to sell drugs. So how do you intervene in such situations, and what are the strategies that you employ to address offenders and re-offenders, please? Thank you.
Perhaps while Susie's just still making a few notes of the questions, I think I just wanted to highlight in relation to Councillor Rice, your comment around female representation and male role models. And it's just really to advise in our youth service, so in our preventative service as such, so out there universal offer to our community. We have youth workers from diverse backgrounds, different genders, with additional needs, really focused on providing support, groups, interventions for our community that are representative of our community. So I just want to just highlight in terms of what's out there in kind of, I suppose, our community.
And not to do down what Angie's just said, it's really, really difficult to attract males to the Youth Justice Service. It didn't used to be. I don't know whether the pay is not competitive or what really happens, but we try really, really hard to get males to apply. We're now sort of going to go with a new strategy of trying to hold a workshop, which brings males in to see what youth justice is all about. But this is not a problem in Ealing. It's across the board. It's across London, and you know what the way that we sort of counteract it is that we work with partnership agencies and provide positive male role models through mentors. So Brentford Community Sports Trust, an agency called VIP, and Safety Box, all of those provide mentors to us, and that's the way we kind of get around that issue. And also our group work programs are often led by males, so we try our best. I can't get them in. I try, you know, we select people and they don't turn up. So, just can't get them in. The boxing is it's boxer size. It's not boxing each other. It's boxing against pads. So that is hugely popular activity for our young men. And the person who does it is a male, really positive role model, and talks to them about nutrition and sleep and all sorts of things, as well as boxing. So really, really positive activity, that one. Where was I going with the other one? Incel. Incel. Yes, incel. So involuntary celibate. That's yeah. Yeah. Yes, I can't remember I wrote that a long time ago, so I can't remember the context of which I was writing that, but that is what it is, involuntary celibate, yeah. So EAP, expansion of restorative justice. I think I will admit that this was my first time writing a strategic plan. I think I was probably a little bit over ambitious of what we could do. And then the inspection hit us straight afterwards. So I think we did get slightly skewed off target. The plan is still to go down that route, but also it's resources really to be able to, what we needed to do first was expand our volunteer pool. So we've done that. We've recruited 10 new volunteers and trained them in restorative justice. So it's literally, it was just, we were a little bit staggered. So we've done that now. So we need to get them some experience in working with us. And once they're experienced enough, then we can try to expand into EAP. Still, you know, we've talked to them about it. They want it, but it's just a resource really. And then it was about being pressured to sell drugs. So how do we respond to that? It is really difficult. What we try to do is, as soon as we're aware of that kind of exploitation, we try to put positive mentors in. We work with an agency called Rescue and Response, who are absolutely sort of aware of all these issues and are able to speak to children on a level, and they know exactly what's happening on the street with them. So we work with those mentors and the mentors I've already mentioned. We have group work programs that look at sort of identity and raising aspirations and you know, looking at your own goals and sort of really just trying to pull children who we think are vulnerable away from that I don't want to call it a lifestyle entrapment, I would say. But when children are really in that situation, we try to move them away through social care, trying to sort of, you know, often having to take them into care because people are literally standing outside their house or threatening them. So we do try to take them outside of the situation. Sometimes that works and they're sort of put roots down in a new area and that works. Other times they're drawn back to London, unfortunately, and then get themselves into further trouble. So it's super difficult.
Sorry, if they do re-offend, so what are the strategies? Are they the same, or you just include something different?
So when they escalate, I mean, we just really try to sort of advocate for them, and it usually is be taken into care. Really, that is usually the kind of that's the limit, and you know, further sort of supports are put in place when they're in care. Go on, yeah.
Yeah, just to elaborate on that as well, that if it was deemed that the child was a victim of modern slavery, which is the legislation it would come under, we would look to take them out of the criminal justice system. There's something called the National Referral Mechanism. And what that is it's a referral made where someone presents as potentially a suspect for drug dealing or an offence of that nature, but it's clear to the investigators that they are being manipulated or coerced into doing that, then they will be taken out of that criminal justice process for a period. It will get a national referral mechanism, which is an independent look at the scenario, and they will be treated as a victim if that determination is made. So just a way of taking them out of the criminal justice system and treating them as a victim.
Unfortunately, my tired brain forgot that. But we do work quite extensively with the police gangs team as well to try to get intelligence and work out where they're linked and map the situation really.
So we have more questions. So Councillor Hamidi.
Earlier
in the presentation, you mentioned about prevention, and you kind of touched up on working with schools and colleges. I want to know, can you elaborate a little more on this? Like what age group, what sort of program, what is covered in those programs? And as part of the program, I don't know if you know this information or not, because I know it's a policing partner that does it. So as part of the program, is it officers that go and carry out these programs, I guess, with the kids, or is it people with lived experience? Because usually kids, they do, you know, if somebody goes in a uniform, they don't want to engage. Where if somebody goes in with a lived experience and they say, you know, I was in a gang before, I've done this or I've done that, it kind of hits home with them and they can, you know, understand them better. So that's if you can just give me some information about that, maybe.
Councillor Kingston.
Yeah, I just want to know about sort of multi-generational crime, not necessarily grooming, but for example, a child's is crossed your paths. These parents are known to the police for their own reasons. Obviously, their parents would probably be a bit resistant to any change. How you can deal with them in a positive way.
Thank you. Councillor Nagpal.
Thank you for the presentation. It's clear a lot of important work is taking place in this very important space, and really pleased to hear about the compassionate approach to child first and offender second, particularly with exploited children who you said carry knives because they fear for their lives. And you said that they're educated on the consequences of carrying a knife. But if they subsequently stop carrying the knife, are they then at risk of coming to harm? How are they protected from coming to harm? And presumably you don't take them out of that scenario immediately. So are they at risk of coming to harm if they're not carrying this knife anymore? Not that I'm encouraging carrying the knife, but you know, it's clearly a difficult situation to be in for that child.
Thank you. Councillor Conti also had a question, so I'll ask Councillor Conti, and that will be the end of questions for this item.
It was really following on from the previous response about from Councillor Scrutiny about what you do in terms of if someone's being coerced and, you know, I think grooming, etc., into committing crime. We've heard a lot about how you take the children out, but what happens further up? I guess it's more of a question for the police. I guess, you know, nearly everything we've heard tonight is about how children are being exploited by, I'm not sure whether it's other children or older children or adults. And how are the police tackling that? Because there are always going to be vulnerable children. We can do everything we can to protect them. But how do we tackle the people doing the exploiting? I don't think we've really heard anything about that this evening. And I think that's such a crucial bit of the puzzle. And I'd be really interested to hear what the police are doing in that space.
Do you want to go with that one first while I get my notes in gear?
So predominantly that would be our gangs unit, our gangs team that would work alongside the child. Once they've potentially gone into the national referral mechanism, we would seek to get that child engaged to give us some information that unfortunately is not always forthcoming through whatever reason, fear or reprisals or what have you. But if that intelligence does come in, then my gangs team would certainly look at that, and they would look to upstream to go up that echelon of market of drugs. And that could involve a number of things: covert activity. It can involve directed surveillance on those persons to try and capture them in the act. It would predominantly be covert work to try and capture that. If there was street dealing, then we could potentially target that, but that's still going to be at the same level predominantly. So yeah, it would largely be covert activity, directed surveillance authorities, phone intercepts. We've got Project Alpha, which looks at all online social media activity, because a lot of this work is this drug supply is done through Snapchat and mediums such as that. So that's been constantly monitored, and they're linked in with my gangs team. And then we've got Operation Yamata as well. Operation Yamata deals exclusively with drugs lines. So I'm sure a lot of people are familiar with it. But essentially, there will be a drugs phone, which is an old disposable phone, which gets handed around to the exploited, potentially children in this circumstance, and it will get handed to child to go and serve up drugs. Operation Yamata deals exclusively with taking those drug lines out, and that will be working upstream to the providers of those handsets to the children. So there is work ongoing. A lot of it will depend on the information we get, but there is also a significant amount of work that is done covertly to address it without needing the child to engage.
Chair, if I may just quickly add, I know that was a very strategic response from the police, but at the local level, whereas before we were shared tri-borough superintendent of police, but now we have our own superintendent of police for Ealing, where we started off with one inspector. We have now 3 inspectors in the borough, so there'll be a lot of intelligence work going on behind the scenes, and also there'll be more recruitment for Ealing so that there's more presence on the streets as well in our town centres and also in the hotspot areas. And I'm sure that's where the strategic work will be carrying on with the new team who's embedded now. And I'm very proud to say that Ealing Borough has 3 inspectors where we started off with just 1. And the superintendent of police is very dedicated to make sure to make that change, to make that turnaround. And I think where the report has mentioned that there was a bit of a sort of a disconnect with the Metropolitan Police and how we were engaging with them, with the Youth Justice Service, it's now strengthened. And it's also where we'll find that the presence at the meetings is more evident to show that there is a lot of link in knowing what is happening locally and how we can really work together to mitigate all these issues, which I don't think will mitigate everything, Chair, but it's a beginning.
And you'll have to forgive me because I know it's you, but I can't see a thing in my eyesight. So, Hamidi, Councillor Hamidi. So the schools programmes, I think what you're referring to is our schools programme, which is the Lion programme. Is that the one? Yeah. So we do deliver that in schools, and it's aimed at children who are at the edge of exclusion. So it's trying to at the start of it, build trust with them. It is officers going in, but it is my youth justice officers who are well versed in engaging children, so they are able to engage them, and the aim of it is to try to increase aspiration in those children and attachment to education, and to really try to sort of get them to think about their own goals, their identity, and what they want from life, and to get them to see that actually carrying on with school is a much better option than being out of it. So that I can't give you the sort of ins and outs, nuts and bolts, but Gary Brugier, who is our serious youth violence and victims manager, is the person who runs that programme in the service. If you want to further.
So there are no programmes that go into schools and talk to kids about knife crime, like don't carry a knife, or they may not be on the edge of exclusion, or they don't have any previous conviction, or they're just not known to the police or anything, but due to peer pressure or anything, they can carry a knife or any sort of this sort of prevention. There's no programs as such in schools for this?
Is called Your Life You Choose. We are not directly involved in that. I think police are, aren't they? Yeah. Police, possibly health, social care. I'm not sure who's involved with that. Courts go in, don't they, to try and deter people from getting involved in offending from the beginning. But that's not something that's run directly.
Can I ask
to
further
us.
information on that? Because I'm very much invested. I'm trying really hard because I engage with schools and teenagers especially.
Yeah.
So I'm very much invested in this, and I want to find out more information on this if possible, if you can come
And,
back to me on that.
it doesn't directly look at knife crime, but the MVP programme is also running in lots of schools in the area.
Can I just follow up on Councillor Hamidi's question? So I've been thinking through this evening, talking about schools. So we've got a range of schools in the borough, different styles of management, of governing bodies. Is there are you happy is the right word? Is there a consistency of support with working with your teams and with the police? Because I can imagine some of the schools are probably more authoritarian in style and happier to exclude students than others. Is that, can you make a comment on that at all?
Do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, we have our Ealing Learning Partnership that all work together. So there's a really good program that focuses on the quality and the consistency of the school offer. And so there's regular meetings, there's quadrant meetings with schools, with extended partners, so with health, with social care, education, voluntary sector, where we come together and we have discussions. So I think, and there's also a therapeutic thinking program that's just started in schools, which is around supporting teachers, training teachers to be able to understand that therapeutic thinking. So how the type of intervention that they're providing as a school to young people, where there are young people that are struggling, whether it's with neurodiverse needs or other behaviours. But I think as a whole, there is a lot of progress in terms of how the schools are now working together and having a consistent approach to interventions and supporting young people.
If I might also add is that there's also a lot of support for the families, which is proactively driven by Ealing's early help offer, and that is through the Ealing Partnership as well. So there is a lot of sort of work that goes on in the schools. And I think it's important, as you've raised, that Councillor Hamidi and yourself need more information on what kind of prevention work is carried out within our schools and how we're tackling crime at a very young age and how we can actually support those young people in our schools. I think it'd be good to also have a take up from the police. I think this is a joint up work. It's just not about Ealing Council, going into schools and trying to tackle these problems. I think it's a joint effort. And I'm sure that we have officers that do go into schools talking about crime, talking about knife crime, talking about drugs, also sex offences as well, Chair. There, I think, definitely something that we need to look up to see what work is going on and make sure that we bring it back to the committee.
Were you going to say something?
Yes, sorry, I just wanted to note, linked to that, councillor, that there's also, there are schools, community officers attached to schools that provide that type of education and support for our young people in Ealing.
And Councillor Kingston, you raised about multi-generational crime. We do obviously see that parents who've been involved in the system a long time ago, but more often we see sort of families, linked up families with children of the same sorts of ages. So, we'll be a bit like, oh, here comes another, coming through. So, we've tried to sort of take an early intervention approach to siblings of families that we know have come through into the Youth Justice Service. So that was one of the intentions of the early intervention officer, was to try to pick up those siblings before they came to us, sort of thing, and to try to do some early intervention work to stop them coming through, because we do very much see that, like some families, all the children come through. And so we wanted to sort of get in early and do work with those younger siblings, because the sibling route is a very clear route to us. But in terms of parents, yes, we do see parents have been through the system. And I think mostly it's trying to establish some kind of trust with those parents and to sort of help them understand that we're listening to what they're saying, and that their experience of the criminal justice system may not be today's experience of the criminal justice system, and trying to sort of build that trust with parents. Some parents unfortunately are colluding with children, and some are exploiting them. So obviously that's much more difficult to deal with, but that as well. And the corner there, sorry, I can't see, councillor. But you were talking about me saying that children carry knives because they're in fear for their lives. Those top end ones are, and yes, any child that's carrying a knife, we're always looking at why they're doing it. So is it just a faddy thing that are they thinking they want to carry one because everyone else is carrying one, or is there a genuine reason why they feel unsafe? If they do feel unsafe, then we're doing safety planning extensively with them to try and make them feel safer, avoid areas where they don't feel safe, have sort of, from a sort of contextual safeguarding approach to them. We're trying to sort of say, are there shops or places in that area where you could go if you felt unsafe, if you can't avoid it totally, so we're working very clearly with them and their parent to try and think about, how they can make themselves more safe and therefore not have to carry a knife in the future. Mostly that works, not with the very sort of heavily exploited. We're not going to stop. Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's a marathon set of questions. So I think that's the end of the item. So we are asked to note the delivery of the YJS plan will be managed through the Strategic Director of Children's Services as the chair of the Partnership Management Board, and notes that all future YJS plans will be presented earlier in the year to OSC for their engagement and feedback. That's all agreed. Councillor Ball, sorry.
I mean, could we add in a recommendation around the need to try to increase therapeutic placements that came up in quite a long time ago, early part of the discussion?
I can't see why not. Everyone happy with that?
Looked after children.
Yeah. We'll find a word of phrasing for that. Thank you. Great. So now we have your second paper. Now we've just had an hour and a half on the last. We're not doing an hour and a half. We want to go home, so we can do it condensed. And then, colleagues, please ask questions, but not too many. Maybe just take the papers as read. Actually, yeah, we're going to take the papers as read. I think Sam's right, because everyone should have read the papers. And if colleagues have questions, we'll go straight to the questions. Yeah, thanks, Sam. Councillor Ball.
Yeah. So jumping straight to the bit that got the inadequate rating. So about out of court disposals. So clearly, part of the problem was the new tool being bedded in, and you've addressed that. But the inspectors also specifically found that more oversight and guidance by managers is needed to ensure that practitioners identify and analyse the risks clearly. And I looked at the improvement plan, and it contains some actions, but on the face of it, there seem to be actions around training and auditing, rather than that increase in management oversight of frontline staff on individual cases. So I wondered, is that aspect of the inspector's findings being addressed?
Yes. So management oversight was always in place. So every single assessment that is done is countersigned by a manager. They are looking through it. I think that, as I said before, the manager was also in the same position, grappling with a new tool. The tool that we started to use, the way that it expressed risk was very different to what we'd been used to. It was very kind of used a matrix. It was simple in terms of you could see exactly, where you were on this matrix. And this one, in an attempt to try and simplify it, took that matrix out and just kind of gave a big sort of box for narrative. So it wasn't as easy to express the risk in there. So I think, the manager was definitely, as we all were, rudely awakened by that. So she is doing the train the trainer training when they roll it out in April, May, because this assessment is only just now rolling out across the country. So the oversight will be improved by that. She has improved her oversight already. I think everybody has become very paranoid about, the risk, and looking very, very carefully and scrutinising it. And I think, to be honest, I think the officers are feeling under the cosh because they're being scrutinised so heavily around that. So yeah, we've improved it.
Okay. People have run out of steam. No, well, thank you very much. Thank you for the report, which everyone has read. So we didn't go to the presentation, but I think it does make sense. So we asked recommendations that OSC notes the findings of the HMIP. Happy there? We note the improvement plan in place to address the recommendations of the HMI inspectors, and the separate YJS improvement plan will be merged in 2024. We note that. Thank you very much. Thank you for a very good contribution. We have one more item, which will be quick, the work programme, which you have at the back of your agenda. We have next month, 25th of April is a call-in only meeting. We'll see if we have that. And then on the 9th of May, we have 3 items: Borough Sanctuary, annual review of complaints, and the council plan performance update.
9th of May.
That's the 9th of May. So I suspect that'll be quite a lengthy meeting. If no. And then we have another meeting scheduled for the end of May, 23rd of May, call in only. We agreed with the plan?
If I can just,
Sam has one comment.
a very small comment to make, which is that, as you can see, we're coming to the end of the municipal year. And we do need to start thinking about what we're going to do for next year for scrutiny. I think from the discussions we've had, around the table tonight, well, maybe a few light actually with substitution and things, but generally at OSC we've got the chairs of the panels. I think we did have a discussion a few months ago, I think it was, about what we might want to see for scrutiny next year, which was, I think the consensus was we were quite happy to sort of stick with the model we've got at the moment and develop it a bit further. So I fully intend to use the next meeting where we have all the chairs and officers around the table, the informal meeting we have, to have a bit more of a wider discussion about that, and perhaps also maybe workshop some ideas about what we might want to put on the work programme for the various committees for the next year, bearing in mind that some of the chairmanships might change, so the chairships might change. It just gives an opportunity to start thinking about that, ensuring there's some continuity with the panels. So look out for that. I think it's in a couple of weeks in April. So that's the kind of plan. So I sort of prepared tonight for the question of what for next year. So I just thought I'd put that out there, and we'll do that in that place away from the committee meeting, because the last meeting of the year looks pretty busy as well. So what I'd quite like to do is get that all wrapped up and done in our informal meeting, and then have a proposal for you at the meeting in May.
And obviously committee chairs will have input, because we're meeting anyway, but there's other members who, we've had many meetings. If you have ideas, thoughts, comments, please feed them into Sam and myself, because we just want to keep developing it and make best use of OSC, but also the individual panels, health, and the individual panels going forward. Thank you very much. Everyone have a very lovely weekend. I thought we'd be here till 11 o'clock the way we were going, but we did it for 25 to 10. So thank you very much. Very good meeting, and see each other on the other side of Easter. Thank you.